Hello, hello everyone. Good good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Oh man, I'm sorry I'm late. I had to go and grab lunch. I just got some potato fries though. Hmm. Let me know if the background noise is too loud. Mm-hmm. Alright, we'll be starting pretty soon here. Okay. Yeah, as you can see, today we have some nice rainy ambience music. And we have a nice free asset background that I got on Twitter. You can find the credits in the caption below or the video description. We have this nice umbrella keeping us dry. Yeah, it's been raining for the past few days, so I thought this is fitting. And because I found this free background outset the other day, and it has hydrangeas, which matched our thumbnail. So I'm like, oh, it's perfect. It's perfect. There's something in my throat. Hold on. Just like drink some water. But hello, Yuki. Ikes. ZZZ, are you tired? Thank you, I will. Let me get my book ready here. Creating a nice ambience for everyone. Hey, Kuro. Hey, Yuki. You're Yuki, right? Euclips. Got me some puffy snacks here, too. Oh, I knew that was you. Welcome back. Nice to see you. Do you like my setup for you today? It's gonna be nice to listen to if you're gonna take a nap or going to sleep. You'll be reading with the rain ambience. That is perfect. I'm just gonna eat a few more pockets and then we'll start. I'm so hungry. I didn't eat lunch yet. Mm-hmm. 4:14. Oh, is it raining over there? Oh wait, 4:14. Is it AM or PM? Maybe I will hear your story until I sleep. Yeah. I'm here to help you out. Oh, it's so early. Why are you so awake? Don't tell me you woke up to hear to hear my stream. Oh. We'll see about that. I hope this video or this stream will help you fall asleep. Alright, so today we're going to read chapters 17 through 20 of A Daughter of the Samurai. So I believe last time we left off, Etiko got married in the United States. I forgot where. I think it was like the Northeast somewhere. And we learned about why she changed her religion to Christianity. Yeah, that's all I remember. So we'll see what other adventures Etiko takes us in her journey in the United States. Just kidding. Yeah. Okay. What does IKZ mean? Ikes? Ikes? I'm a granny. I'm a boomer. I don't know. Oh, okay. Okay, here we go. Chapter 17. First impressions. My first year in America was a puzzling, hurried push from one partially comprehended thought to another. Laugh out loud. Nevertheless, it was a happy year. No Japanese bride is ever homesick. She has known from babyhood that fate has another home waiting for her, and that her destiny is to be fulfilled. Every girl accepts this in the same matter, of course, way that she accepts going to school. In marriage, she does not expect happiness without hardship any more than she expects school to be a playground with no study. So I drifted on from week to week, occasionally having to remind myself that even in America, the eyelids of a samurai know not moisture. But, on the whole, finding the days full of new and pleasing experiences. I soon learned to like everything about my home, although at first, the curtained windows, the heavy dark furniture, the large pictures and the carpeted floors seemed to hem me in. But I reveled in our wide porches and the broad lawn which slept in a graceful slope, between carving paths down to the low stone wall. The battlemented top was like an elongated castle turret, and the big stone post of the iron gates, half hidden from the porch by the tall evergreens, seemed to me to have a protecting air. Then there was one big crooked pine and an equal tree standing side by side, which when the moon was just right, made a perfect picture of an old Japanese poem. Between bent branches, a silver sickle swings aloft in youthful incompleteness, unknowing of his coming day of glory. Oh, I did love all the outdoors of that home from the very first moment that I saw it. Much of my time was spent on one or the other of our 3 big porches, for Mother loved them almost as much as I did, and we used to go out the first thing after breakfast, she with her sewing and I with the newspaper. In order to improve my English, I read the paper every day, and I found it very interesting. I always turned first to the list of divorces of the court news. It was such a surprising thing to me that more women than men should be seeking for freedom. One day, I told Mother that I felt sorry for the husbands. Well, hello, Palm Star. Why are you reading outside in the rain? Why not inside the house? Because I'm trying to be artistic here. I think I shared with Yuki, but it's been raining the past few days, and then I found this free background ad set on Twitter the other day. It matched, the hydrangeas matched our thumbnail, so I'm like, this is perfect. And then I found this umbrella asset too, so I'm like, okay, this is what we're doing. And I found some ambient music, background music too, so this is like perfect, right? You mean you don't like to read in the rain as well? You're gonna catch a cold, and granted, with a cold is bad news. It's okay, I'm strong. I'm used to the cold, remember? I'm from the snow mountains. This is nothing. I sleep when it rains. I actually don't like rain. I get scared. Don't get sick, Kuro. I won't. Don't worry. I'm strong. Yeah, I don't like thunderstorms actually. I get scared. So I hate it when it rains. Me too. Yeah. So I'm helping you guys out, okay? You want to take a nap? Now's the time. Okay, continuing. Why? She asked. It is as often the fault of the husband as the wife, I think. Isn't it? It's so in Japan. Kuro is an interesting cloud. Indeed. Who wants to be the same as everybody else anyways, right? But after choosing for herself, it must be hard for her wifely pride to acknowledge failure, I replied. How about the man? Said Mother. Or not, as she pleases. That is her part to come or not to come. He sees and wants and beckons. She blushes and smiles and comes. Why, I thought it was the custom in American marriages for the woman to select. I said, somewhat surprised, for I, with most Japanese people of the day, so interpreted the constant references in the books and papers to the American custom of women choosing their own husbands. It was one of the many exaggerated ideas that we had of the dominant spirit of American women and the submissive attitude of American men. In the conversation that followed, I heard for the first time that in this country, the custom is for the worded request always to come from the man. It is like the folktale that tells you of the origin of our race, I said. That sounds as if it might be more interesting than the court items in the newspaper, laughed Mother. Suppose you tell me about it. It's rather a long story from the beginning, I said. But the important part is that a god and a goddess named Izanagi and Izanami, or Adam and Eve, came from heaven on a floating bridge and formed the islands of Japan. Then they decided to remain and build themselves a home. So they went to the heavenly post for their ceremony of marriage. The bride starting from the right and the bridegroom from the left. They walked around the heavenly post. When they met in the other side, the goddess exclaimed, "The beautiful god!" The god was pleased and said the bride had spoiled the ceremony, as it was his place to speak first. So they had to begin again. The goddess started again from the right of the heavenly post, and the god from the left. But this time, when they met, the goddess did not speak until she was spoken to. "Thou beautiful goddess," Izanagi said. "Thou beautiful god," replied Izanami. At this time, the ceremony was properly performed. The husband and the wife built themselves a home, and from them came the nation of Japan. So it seems that Japanese and American marriages were originally not so unlike after all, said Mother. One of the most surprising things in America to me was the difficulty and often impossibility of my being able to do so as a wife, the very things for which I had been especially trained. Matsuo had come to this country when he was a boy in his teens, and was as unfamiliar with the many Japanese customs as I was with those of America. So with no realization of his part of my problems, I had many puzzling experiences connected with wifely duty. Some of these were tragic and some amusing. At one time, for several evenings in succession, business detained Matsuo until a late hour. I was not well, and Mother objected to my sitting up to await his return. This troubled me greatly, for in Japan, it is considered lazy and disgraceful for a wife to sleep while her husband is working. Night after night, I lay with wide open eyes, wondering whom it was my duty to obey. My faraway mother, who knew Japanese customs, or the honored new mother who was teaching me the ways of America. I had another puzzling time when Mother was called away for a week by the death of a relative. Our maid, Clara, had heard Japan spoken of the land of cherry blossoms, and thinking to please me, she made a cherry pie one night for dinner. In Japan, cherry trees are cultivated for the blossoms only, just as roses are in America, and I have never seen a cherry fruit. But the odor of the pie was delicious as it was placed before me to cut and serve. "What is that?" asked Matsuo. Oh, remember, Matsuo was her husband. "Oh, cherry pie! It's too acid. I don't care for it." No Japanese bread is so disrespectful as to eat a dainty her husband cannot enjoy. So I gave orders for that beautiful pie to be eaten in the kitchen. But my heart followed it, and no pie that I have ever seen since has seemed worthy to compare with the juicily delicious memory. Clara was always doing kind things for me, and one day I asked Matsuo what can I give her as a present. He said that in America, money was always welcome, so I selected a new bill and, as we do in Japan, wrapped it in a white paper and wrote on the outside, "This is cake." How Matsuo did laugh. "It's alright in America to give naked money," he said. "But this is only for beggars," I replied, really troubled. "Nonsense," said Matsuo. "Americans consider money an equivalent for service. There is no spiritual value in money." I meditated a good deal over that, for to a Japanese, the expression of thanks, however deceitful the form it takes, is a heartthrob. I liked our servants, but they were a never-ending surprise to me. Mother was kindness itself to the maid and to the man who worked on the place, but she had no vital interest in them, and they had no unselfish interest in us. In my home in Japan, the servants were minor members of the family, rejoicing and sorrowing with us, and receiving in return our cordial interest in their affairs. But this did not mean undue familiarity. There always existed an invisible line at the door sill, and I never knew a servant to overstep it or wish to. For a Japanese servant takes pride in the responsibility of his position. Clara attended to her duties properly, but her pleasures were outside the home. And on the days of her afternoon out, she worked with such astonishing energy that it suggested no thought of anything but getting through. I could not help contrasting her with gentle, polite Toshi and her dignified bows of farewell. But, on the other hand, Clara voluntarily did things for us which I should never have expected from any maid in Japan, except my own nurse. One day I cringed with a feeling akin to horror when I heard Matsuo carelessly called out, "Clara, won't you take these shoes to the kitchen porch for William to clean?" Such a request of a Japanese servant, other than the one whose duty was to care for the sandals, would be considered an insult. But Clara picked up the shoes and carried them away, singing cheerily as she went. Life in America was very puzzling. All Japanese girls were trained in housework, so naturally I was much interested in watching how everything was done in an American home. Mother encouraged my curiosity, saying that the inquiring mind is the one that learns. And Clara was always patient in explaining to that sweet little Mrs. Sugarmotor. I was interested in the kitchen most of all, but the things to work with were so heavy and were hung so high, and the shelves were so far up that when I attempted to do anything there, I found myself at serious disadvantage. For the first time, I sympathized with foreigners in Tokyo, who, it was said, frequently complained of the inconvenient littleness of everything. One of the schoolgirls used to tell us amusing tales about a foreign family to whom her father had rented his house. The man had to bow his head every time he passed through a doorway, and his wife thought it dreadful that the servant wanted to cut vegetables on the table 6 inches from the floor and to wash dishes without soap. All the schoolgirls thought that the woman must have a peculiar mind, for we understood that foreigners used soap as we did a bran bag, for bathing only. But after seeing how lavishly Clara used boiling water and soap in the kitchen, I realized that it was necessary, because so much grease and oil are used in American cooking. Our Japanese food was mostly vegetables. For fish, we had special dishes and washed them with charcoal ashes. One Friday, which was our cleaning day, I went into my room and was surprised to find Clara rubbing my bureau with an oiled cloth. "What are you doing, Clara?" I asked. "Oh, just cleaning up a bit, Mrs. Sugarmotor," she replied. To put something sticky on a thing to make it clean. Incomprehensible. But when I examined my bureau later and found that it was dry and shiny and clean, I was still more surprised. None of the wood of Japanese houses, outside or in, was ever varnished, oiled, or painted, and nothing was ever put on the furniture except lacquer to preserve or hot water to cleanse. Taki and Keen wiped the entire woodwork of the house every day with a cloth wrung out of hot water, and our porches were cleaned morning and evening by a servant who was stooping over and pushing a steaming pad of folded cloth before her, ran quickly back and forth from one end of the porch to the other, carefully following the line of the boards. The porches had gradually become so dark and polished that they reflected distinctly any person walking on them, and since they never were stepped on with outside shoes, they kept their satiny polish for years. I was always interested in housework, but an exciting interest came at the time of house cleaning. Then I wandered from the room to room, watching with amazement and delight while William and Clara worked. I had never dreamed that the heavy cloth which covered the floors, fitted so neatly into each corner and around the projections, was nailed down and could be lifted up in one immense piece and carried out to be cleaned. 2 men were required to do the work. Our floors in Japan were covered with mats that pushed together as tight as the pieces in a box of dominoes, but each mat was only 6 feet by 3 in size, and Gia could easily handle them alone. Matsuo and I had adjoining rooms, and when I went upstairs to see if the cloth had been taken from his floor also, I saw that the large mahogany closet, which I had supposed was a part of the house, had been pulled out bodily into the middle of the room. I was too surprised for words. And its back, and indeed the backs of all our beautiful furniture, was only roughly boards, such as I had seen in Japan in a cart being taken to the shop of a carpenter. It was most astonishing. I have never before seen any furniture that was that planed and polished all over. Outside, inside, top, bottom, and back. Mother explained this American deceit originated in the practical idea of saving time and work. Thus, I received my first insight into the labor problem. It was during house cleaning that Mother and I had our first heart-to-heart talk. She was looking over some trunks of clothing in the attic, and I was sitting near, holding a big cake of camphor, for which I broke off small pieces and wrapped them in tissue paper for her to place between the folds of the garments. She was showing me an army coat which her grandfather had worn in the War of 1812. The open trunks, the disarranged clothing, the familiar odor of camphor in the air, reminded me of the airing days at home. I could see so well grandmother's room where father and I always went to get away from the ropes of swinging garments and the confusion of busy servants brushing and folding. "What are you talking about, Etsu?" asked Mother with a smile. "Your eyes looked as if they were seeing things 5,000 miles away." "More than that," I answered, "for they are looking into a past before I was born." I leaned over and stroked the big collar of the old army coat on Mother's lap. In some way it seemed, just then, the nearest to my heart of anything in America. "In our dog go down also, Mother," I said, "are secret mementos to which war memories cling. There is a pile of thin-leaved books written in my father's hand, which are dear treasures to us all. You do not know, Mother, but my father was a prisoner once, held as a hostage for a long time in an army camp. His surroundings were very different from what the word suggests here in America. The camp was located in a temple grove, and part of the temple where the priests lived was given over to the officials and a high-ranked prisoner. And although father was alone among enemies, he was treated as an honored guest. His faithful attendants was separated from him, but instead were youthful samurai, who with respectful attention cared for every want. For recreation, they had trials in art, defending, and various samurai sports. And sometimes, as was with the social customs among samurai, they would spend hours together in poem competition or singing classic songs of old Japan. He had every physical comfort and mental recreation, but he was outside the world. Even his books were poems and prose of fine old literature which held no word of present life. At the close of each monotonous day, he would lay his head down upon his pillow, and his restless mind would wonder. Had the imperialist army reached Echigo? Who was in charge of Nagaoka Castle? What was the unknown fate of his retainers, of his son, of his wife and daughters? There was a beautiful garden where he walked daily. Perhaps there were guards outside the gate. He did not know. He saw nothing to tell him that he was not free. And probably there was nothing, for his guardians knew that he was held in chains, stronger than any that could be forged, the spirit of samurai honor. During his lonely time, father's dearest hours were those he spent with his writing brushes and in games of Go, with the Commander General, a man of superior culture, who often came to talk with him. The two men had similar taste and equal sense of honor, differing only in that they were loyal to different masters, and those months together formed and sealed the friendship of a lifetime. Both were fond of playing Go, and both played well and earnestly. Neither spoke his secret though, but long afterward, father confided to mother that he was conscious that in every game they played, each in his own heart was fighting for his own cause. Sometimes one would win, sometimes another. Oftener still there was a draw, and always the vanquished gravely congratulated the victor, and as gravely received his formal thanks in reply. So passed the days and weeks and months and more months and more until he dreaded to think back and count, and not a word or look or hint had come to him of any world outside the temple walls. Late one beautiful spring afternoon, he was sitting quietly in his room overlooking the garden. A priestly chanting was faintly heard from the distant rooms. There was a breeze, and a falling cherry blossom were drifting across the garden, their fragrant petals slipping and catching in tinted drifts against the uneven stepping stones. A young moon was chasing shadows in the pine branches. It was a picture Father never forgot. A young attendant approached, in his usual deferential manner, but with a grave face, announced, "Honorable guest, the evening meal is served." Father bowed his head, and a little lacquer table was brought and placed before him on the mat. At last, the expected message had come. The rice bowl was on the right. The soup was on the left. The chopsticks were standing upright as if to place before a shrine. And the browned fish in the oval dish was without a head. It was the silent command from a samurai to a samurai. Father ate his dinner as usual. When the time came for his bath, the attendant was ready. His hair was washed, and the queue, no longer needed to bear the helmet's weight, was left unoiled and loose, to be tied with a paper cord. He donned his white linen death robe, and over it placed the soft-tinted kamishimo of a samurai who goes to death. Then quietly he waited for the midnight hour. The commander-general entered and greeted him with the solidarity stiffness that hides deep feeling. "I come not as an official of the state," he said, "but as a friend, to ask you to honor me with a message." "I thank you deeply," Father replied. "For this and other kindness, I left my home to return no more. I gave instructions then. I have no message." But he asked that the commander would care for his attendant who, by Father's death, would become a masterless man. The general assured him that this should be done, and also told him that his own highest retainer would be Father's attendant at the last. Thanks were bowed and formal courtesies exchanged. Then these two men, who had grown to know and respect each other deeply, parted with no other word. It seemed cold to an American, but it was the samurai way, and each knew the other's heart. The hour came. Father held the highest rank of the seven who waited for the midnight hour. So first and alone, clothed in his death robe, and with the pride of centuries in his bearing, he walked forward to the temple yard. As he entered the enclosure, the others on the opposite side, white-robed and silent, were waiting. One was a child, with an attendant close behind. Father saw without looking, the gray face and strained eyes of Minato, his own little son's guardian. The child made a motion, so slight it was scarcely more than a quiver. Minato clutched the boy's sleeve. Father strode on. The quiver passed. The boy sat erect, his eyes looking straight forward. It was my brother. Oh, whatever he has been since, in this new world so unfamiliar to him. There, in his own world, the world which, by inheritance and environmental, he understood. He was a samurai. My father took his place, with calm and dignified bearing, with his head upright and his eyes looking straight forward, unseen. But in his heart, oh, why could not the God he did not know pity him? And I clutched the big collar of the old army coat and buried my coward face within its folds, for I had lost my samurai spirit. America had been too good to me, and a part of me had died. I felt my mother's hand upon my shoulder, but I dared not lift my head and shame my father, for moisture was on the face of his unbrave daughter. Oh, my little girl, my dear little girl. But he did not die. He did not die. I lifted my head, but I did not wipe my eyes. The war had ended, and the new government had pardoned all political prisoners. I said, calm again. The decision was already known to the officials, and the messengers were on the way. But, until they came, the forms had to be carried out to the very end. Yes, I had known of things like that in the days when messages were carried by galloping horses and running men, said Mother sadly. And no one was to blame. If laws could be changed by unproved knowledge, the country would soon be guided by guesswork. And that would never do. That would never do. I looked at Mother in surprise, for with red cheeks and misty eyes, she was clutching tight the army coat on her lap and looking straight at me. How close together are the countries of the world, she went on. Your old nurse was right, Etsu, when she said that the earth is flat and you are on the other side of the plate, not far away, but out of sight. Then we both smiled, but Mother's lips were trembling. She put her arms around me gently, and I've loved Mother ever since. Another memory stone in my life was the day I entertained the club. Mother belonged to a literary society, the members of which studied in different countries and wrote essays. The meetings were held at the homes of the members, and early on in the morning of the very day that it was Mother's turn to entertain, she received a message calling her to the city for between trains. It's okay, Yuki. I hope this helps. I hope you have a good sleep. Dear friend who was passing through the city on her way to the distant land. Mother would be back before the meeting was over, but I was dismayed to be left with the responsibility of arranging the rooms of receiving the guests. There is nothing for you to be worried about, said Matsuo, who was just starting his business. I heard Mother tell William to bring more chairs from upstairs, and you have only to see that he places them like a church. Clara knows how. But Mother meant to have flowers, and she said something about a little table for the president, and, oh, the piano has to be pushed back, Mother said. Mother said so. I do wish she was here. Sleep with hearing Kuro voice is so good. Oh, I'm so glad. I cried in the real anxiety and distress. Don't make a mountain out of a molehill. Clara is equal to anything. And Matsuo ran across the lawn in response to the waving hand of a neighbor who was waiting in his buggy at Iron Gates. You're reading a bedtime story to Yuki. Good! Good. I knew he was right, for Clara had cleaned the rooms the day before, and everything really necessary had been done. But nevertheless, I felt hope. Well, I felt lost and helpless. In the midst of my hour of woe, I saw walking up the path around the lawn an old lady of the neighborhood, who sometimes came in for an informal chat with Mother. I ran out and welcomed her most cordially, eager to ask her advice. Too bad it doesn't affect me. Well, it is really early for Yuki's time right now. It's like 4 in the morning there. The piano is not in the way, she said. These rooms are large enough as they are, even if everyone comes. You won't have to do a thing except put in more chairs. But, as she looked around the big double parlors with the lace-curtained windows and long mirror with gilded frame, the rooms do look empty with the center table taken out. Why don't you scatter about some of those Japanese trinkets that you have upstairs? That would add wonderfully to the general effect. Why are you awake, Yuki? Go to bed. They're going to bed right now. As soon as she was gone, I brought down several Japanese things and placed them here and there about the room. Then I arranged a few iris blossoms in a vase according to the graceful but rigid rules of Japanese flower arrangement, and stepped back to view the effect. From the flowers, my eyes went slowly around the room. I was disappointed. What was wrong? The Japanese articles were each one of rare workmanship, and the vase of blossoms was beautiful. But for some mysterious reason, Mother's parlors never before had looked so unattractive. Suddenly my eye fell on a little bronze incense burner, which had been given me in my childhood, but one of the Toda children from my doll festival set. It looked oddly out of place on top of the American bookcase, and when, lifting my eyes, I saw above it an etching of a dancing fawn. I almost hysterically snatched it away. With lightning swiftness, my mind flew to the cool light rooms of my Nagaoka home, to the few ornaments, and each in the place designed for it. And I began to understand. My Japanese treasures would be beautiful in their proper surroundings, but here they were neither beautiful themselves, nor did they add to the attractiveness of our stately rooms. They were only odd, grotesque curios. Hurriedly putting them away and removing my carefully arranged vase of iris to the kitchen, I ran to a field back of our carriage house and gathered an armful of daisies and feathery grasses. Soon I had all the vases in the house, regardless of shape or hue, loosely filled with the fresh, wild blossoms. The rooms looked beautiful, and they were in perfect harmony with the broad lawn outside, stretching in rolling waves of green down the gray stone wall. West is west, and east is east, I said, as I sank on my sofa with a sigh of relief. I think while I'm here, I'll forget the conventional standard for beauty, for only the charm of naturalness is suited to these big, free home-like rooms of Mother's. End of chapter 17. Let me see. The next few chapters aren't that long. Oh my god. How you feeling, Palm Star? You getting tired too? If I can get you both to sleep, my duty is done. But how's your day going? It's gonna be a long weekend. Ew, who plays Minecraft? Oh my god. Ready? Never. I'm sticking with my opinion. But I am working on building my PC, so maybe I'll play Minecraft one day. Your boomer opinion is so hundreds of years ago. My boomer opinion is very wise. It has aged very well. Yeah, I have some Sakura matcha pocky here, since I couldn't eat my lunch. Stop with the granny talk. Never. Granny talk forever. No, Perry's a boomer like me. They agree with me. The VHSs and the cassettes. What is this streaming you zoomer speak of? We're both boomers. You're 48 while she's 25. How did you know? How did you know? Joke's on you. I'm 84. I hear it from their voice. I'm 84. You whippersnappers. Get off my lawn. I think you need your medicine, Granny. No, I need my food. I'm so hungry. Alright, time to continue. Holy cow, that chapter took almost an hour. Unbelievable. I'm out of oatmeal. I'll make some congee or something. I don't know what else we're gonna do. I don't know either. Fake boomer. I just eat what's easy to eat. Okay, chapter 18. Liquid diet. I wish. I can't live off liquid diet. I need my carbs. Understandable. I like my bread. I like my rice bowls. My potatoes. Can't do the liquid diet. Chapter 18. Strange customs. Wheat bread, right? No. I like garlic bread. Garlic bread is so good. Boomers love wheat bread. Well, I guess I'm just different. I'm built different. I'm built different. One page, right? Chapter 18. Strange customs. We had a large stone church in our suburb which is not quite paid for, and a society of churchwomen called the Ladies' Aid occasionally gave a fair or concert and sometimes a play with local talent in order to obtain money to add to the fund. One evening, Mother, Matsuo, and I attended one of these concerts. On the program was a vocal solo of some classic selection. The singer was the gifted daughter of a wealthy citizen and had received her musical education in Europe. I knew her as a rather quiet young woman, with a gentle voice and a dignified manner. Therefore, I was surprised, when the music began, to see her step forward briskly and informally, bow smilingly to the audience, right and left, and then with a much facial expression, give a low exhibition of high clear trills and echoes that to my untrained ears was a strange and marvelous discord, but the most wonderful thing that I had ever heard in my life. The effect left on my mind was of brightness, quick motion, and high-pitched sound. In strong contrast is our classic music, which always suggests subdued colors, slow movement, and deep mellow tones. Also, like most Japanese art, our music requires listening eyes as well as ears. Otherwise, its appeal is lost. Our classic stage is always the same. The entire back is one solid board of natural cedar wood, on which is painted a gigantic dwarf pine. The door is of a camphor wood and is bare. On this, the singers, of course, are always men, sit as motionless as dolls. Their dress is the old-fashioned, soft-hued garment of ceremony. Each one, before beginning to sing, makes a slow, deep bow, and with studied deliberation, places his fan horizontally before him on the floor. Then, with his hands on his knees, palms down, palms down, and sitting very erect and motionless, he tells in a song, and with incredible elocutionary power, some wonderful tale of war and romance, but wholly without movement of body or change of facial expression. At the close, the singer's face is often flushed with feeling, hot, and with no change of expression. He bows, then gently takes up his fan and resumes his former impassive attitude. The audience sits in profound silence. The listeners may be touched to tears or raised to the highest pitch of excitement, but this can be detected only by the sound of subdued sniffling or the catch of a quick sigh. Sorry. For centuries, repression has been the keynote of everything of high character, and the greatest tribute that can be paid to a singer or actor of classic drama is to receive in a deep silence. One thing in America to which I could not grow accustomed was the joking attitude in regard to women and money. From men and women of all classes, from newspapers, novels, lectures, and once even from the pulpit, I heard allusions to amusing stories of women secreting money in odd places, coaxing it from her husbands, borrowing it from a friend, or saving it secretly for some private purpose. There was never anything dishonorable implied in this. Perhaps the money was saved to get new curtains for the parlor, or even a birthday present for the husband. These jokes were a puzzle to me, and constantly growing one, for as time passed on, I myself saw things which made me realize that probably a foundation of serious truth might lie beneath some of the amusing stories. Our suburb was small, and we were all interested in each other's affairs, so I was acquainted with almost everybody. I knew the ladies to be women of education and culture. Yet there seemed to be among them a universal and openly confessed lack of responsibility about money. They all dressed well and seemed to have money for specific purposes, but no open purse to use with free and responsible judgment. Once, at a church fair, where I had a table, several ladies, after walking around the hall and examining the various booths, had bought some small, cheap articles, but left the expensive ones, saying, "My husband will be here later on, and I'll get him to buy it." Or, "When the gentleman comes, those high-priced things will sell." I had never known a Japanese man to buy anything for his home, or be expected to. Once, when I was shopping with a friend, she stopped at her husband's office to ask him for money. I thought that was strange enough, but a still more curious thing happened when I went with mother to a meeting of the church ladies, where they were raising a certain amount for some unusual purpose. The ladies' aid had recently made a great many calls on the husband's purses, and so this time each member had pledged herself to bring $5, which she must obtain without asking her husband for it. The meeting I attended was the one where the money was handed in, each lady telling, as she gave it, how she had succeeded in getting her $5. Most had saved it in various ways, a little at a time. One said that she had made a real sacrifice, and returned to her milliner a new hat, paid for but not worn, receiving in exchange one that was $5 less in price. Another had sold 2 theater tickets, which had been given to her. Still another told, in a very witty rhyme, how she, a poor lady's aid lady, had spent most of her leisure time for a week, and had pledged herself for a week longer in darning stockings for the children of her neighbor, a rich non-ladies' aid lady. The meeting was intensely interesting. It reminded me of our poem-making parties. Only, of course, this was gayer and those stories were on an undignified subject. I enjoyed it all until a pretty, bright, and beautifully dressed woman rose and said that she didn't know how to save money and she didn't know how to earn it. She had promised not to cheat in her charge account at the store, and she had promised not to ask her husband for $5. So she had done the only thing that was left for her to do. She had stolen it from her husband's pocket when he was asleep. The report caused a great deal of merriment, but I was saddened. All the reports seemed tragic after she said, that was the only thing left to do. It seemed incredible here in America, where women are free and commanding, that a woman of dignity and culture, the mistress of a home, the mother of children, should be forced either to ask her husband for money or be placed in a humiliating position. When I left home, Japan, at large, was still following the old customs of educating a girl to be responsible for the well-being of her entire family, husband included. The husband was the lord of the family, but the wife was the mistress of the home, and according to her own judgment, controlled all its expenses: the house, the food, the children's clothing and education, all social and charitable responsibilities, and her own dress, the material and style of which were expected to conform to her husband's position. Where did she get the money? The husband's income was for his family, and his wife was the banker. When he wanted money for himself, he asked her for it, and it was her pride to manage so that she could allow him the amount suitable for a man of his standing. As to what the requirements of his position might be, there was a little question, for to know this part of the wife's education, the husband might shrug his shoulder and say, "It's very inconvenient." But the entire house and its standing were his pride, and any disarrangement that would mar the whole was his loss. Therefore, the needs of the home come first. A man married, primarily as a duty to the gods and to his ancestors. Secondarily, to obtain a mistress for his home who would guide it in such a manner that it and his family might be a credit to him. If she managed well, he was complimented by his friends. If she failed, he was pitied. That was true of all cases except lords of large estates or financial kings of business. In these cases, there was a home treasurer, but he was at the call of her mistress, and her judgment as to her needs was supreme. The treasurer's only power of protest lay in the right to say, with many apologies, "The honorable mistress is about to overdraw her account." The hint was generally sufficient, for a Japanese woman, like everyone in a responsible position, desired to do her duty credibly. Conventional forms are losing it rigidly year by year, but even yet the people are considerably influenced by rules, which in the past were uniform and recognized by all. Any marked deviation from these is still considered bad form. The standards of my own and my adopted country differed so widely in some ways, and my love for both lands was so sincere, that sometimes I had an odd feeling of standing upon a cloud in space and gazing with measuring eyes upon two separate worlds. At first, I was continually trying to explain, by Japanese standards, all the queer things that came every day before my surprised eyes, for no one seemed to know the origin or significance of even the most familiar customs, nor why they existed and were followed. To me, coming from a land where there is an unforgotten reason for every fashion of dress, for every notion in etiquette, indeed for almost every trivial act of life, this indifference of Americans seemed very singular. Mother was a wonderful source of information, but I felt a hesitation about asking too many questions, for my curiosity was so frequently about odd, trifling, unimportant things, such as why ladies kept on their hats at church while men took off theirs. What was the use of the china plates which I saw hanging on the walls of some beautiful houses? Why guests are taken to the privacy of a bedroom and asked to put their hats and cloaks on the bed, a place that suggested sleep or sickness. Why people make social calls in the evening, the time of leisure in Japan. What originated the merriment of nonsense of Halloween and April Fool's Day, and why such a curious custom existed as the putting of gifts in stockings. Stockings! The very humblest of all the garments that are worn. Good questions. It seems strange to me that there should never be any hint or allusion to these customs in conversation, in books, or in newspapers. In Japan, traditional folklore and symbolisms are before one all the time. The dress of the people on the streets, the trademark on the swinging curtains of shops, the decorations on chinaware, the call of the street vendor, the cap of the soldier, the pleated skirt of the schoolgirl, each points back to some well-known tale of how or why. Even the narrow blue and white towel of jinrikisha man and the layer of lunchbox of workman bear designs suggesting an ancient poem or a bit of folklore, as familiar to every Japanese child as are the melodies of Mother Goose to the children of America. One afternoon, at a small reception, a lady spoke pleasantly to me of the healthfulness of to the foot of a shoe like my sandal, and then referred with disapproval to the high heels and pointed toes then in vogue. Why are these shapes worn? I asked. What started them? Oh, for no reason, she replied. Just the fashion. Like you're folding your dress over left-handed. But there's a reason for that, I said. It is only on a corpse that the kimono is folded over from the right. That interested her, and we had a short talk on the peculiarity of Japanese always honoring the left above the right in everything. From the imperial throne to the tying of a knot. Then, lightly touching the back of my sash, she asked, "Would you mind telling me what this bundle is for? Is it to carry the babies on?" "Oh no," I replied. "It is my sash, and is only an ornament. A baby is carried in a hammock like scarves swung from the nurse's shoulders." Nani? Kuro? Oba-chan? Is that what you said? Kuro granny? Oh, this material of your sash is very beautiful. She said, "May I ask why you arrange it in that flat pad instead of spreading it out so that the design can be seen?" Since she seemed really interested, I willingly explained the various styles of tying a sash for persons differing in rank, age, and occupation, and for different occasions. Then came the final question. "Why do you have so much goods in it?" I wrote, "Hey grandmother." The heck? That first character, it looks like the Kuro kanji, except it has that additional thing in the front. Interesting. That pleased me, for to a Japanese, the material beauty of an article is always secondary to its symbolism. I told her of the original meaning of the 12-inch width and 12-foot length, explained how it represented much of the mythology and astrology of ancient Oriental belief. In Cantonese, you're almost correct. Good. I know my kanjis. This is very interesting, she said as she turned to go, especially about the signs of the zodiac and all that. but it's a shame to hide so much of the magnificent brocade by folding it in. And don't you think, yourself, little lady, and she gave me a merry smile, that it's positively wicked to buy so many yards of lovely goods just to be wasted and useless? As she walked away with a long train of expensive velvet trailing behind her on the floor. Mother's furniture, which was of beautiful wood and some of it carved, at first made me feel as if I were in a museum. But when I went into others' homes, I found that none were simple and plain. Many reminded me of the go-down, so crowded were they with not only chairs, tables, and pictures, but a number of little things. Small statues, empty vases, shelves, and framed photographs, as well as really rare and costly ornaments, all scattered about with utter disregard, according to Japanese standards, of order or appropriateness. It was several months before I could overcome the impression that the disarranged profusion of articles was a temporary convenience, and that very soon they would be returned to the go-down. Most of these objects were beautiful, but some of them were the shape of a shoe or of the sole of the foot. This seemed to be a favorite design, or else my unwilling eyes always spied it out, for in almost every home I entered, I would see it in a paperweight, a vase, or some other small article. Once I even saw a little wooden shoe used as a holder for chopsticks, or toothpicks. Generations of prejudice made this very objectable to me, for in Japan, the feet are the least honored part of the body, and the most beautiful or costly gift would lose all value if it had the shape of a footwear. And Japanese curios! They were everywhere, and in the most astonishingly inappropriate surroundings. Lunchboxes and rice bowls on the parlor tables, cheap rural pictures hanging on elegant walls, shrine gongs used for dining room table bells, sword guards for paperweights, ink boxes for handkerchiefs, and letter boxes for gloves, marriage cups for pin trays, and even little bamboo spittoons I have seen used to hold flowers. In time, my stubborn mind learned, to some extent, to separate an article from its surroundings, and then I began to see its artistic worth with the eyes of an American. Also, I acquired the habit, whenever I saw absurd things here which it evidently arose from from little knowledge of Japan, of trying to recall a similar absurdity in Japan regarding foreign things, and I never failed to find more than one to offset each single instance here. One time, a recollection was forced upon me by an innocent question from a young lady who told me, in a tone of disbelief, that she had heard in a lecture on Japan that elegantly dressed Japanese ladies sometimes wore ordinary, cheap Chanel table covers around their shoulders in place of scarves. I could only laugh and acknowledge that a few years before, that had been a popular fashion. Imported articles were rare and expensive, and since we were never used to table covers ourselves, we had no thought of there being anything but beautiful shawls. I had not the courage to tell her that I had worn one myself, but I did tell her, however, that something that occurred at my home in Nagaoka when I was a child. On my father's return from one of his visits to the capital, he brought Ishininkin a large Turkish towel with a colored border and a deep fringe. The maids, their hearts swelling with pride, went to temple service wearing the towels around their shoulders. I can see them yet as they walked proudly out of the gateway, the white lengths spread evenly over their best dresses and their fringe dangling in its stiff newness above their long Japanese sleeves. And the fringe dangling in its stiff newness... Oh, I read that right. It would be a funny sight to me now, but then I was lost in admiration, and it seemed perfectly natural that they should be, as they were, the envy of all beholders. Of all my experiences in trying to see Japanese things in American eyes, one particularly inharmonious combination was a foolishly annoying trial to me for many months. The first time I called on Mrs. Hoyt, the hostess of an especially beautiful home, my eyes were drawn to a lovely carved mango note, yeah? Hand of grandchild. It's called in Japan. Oh, hagonote. But in America, it was the practical name, scratch my back, which was hanging by its silk cord on the cover of an ebony cabinet. Besides it, thrown carelessly over the same cord, was a rosary of crystal and coral beads. The little ivory finger ring was exquisitely carved, and the rosary was of rare pink coral and flawless crystal. But to the eye of an Oriental, all beauty was ruined by the strange arrangement. It was like putting the Bible and a toothbrush side by side on a parlor table. I did not criticize the judgment of the hostess. Her superior taste in all things article was beyond question. And in America, the maganote was an object of art only. From that viewpoint, it was properly placed. I realized this, and yet, whenever afterward I entered the room, I persistently kept my eyes turned away from the ebony cabinet. It was only after 2 years of close friendship with the hostess that I had the courage to tell her of my shocked first visit to her home. She laughs at me even yet, and I laugh too. But there was a warm feeling of satisfaction in my heart this moment as I remember that the rosary and the maganote no longer hang side by side. There was another thing in Mrs. Hoyt's home which was removed at the same time the rosary and the hand of grandchild parted company. It was a large colored photograph of a scene in Japan. Not an ancient print, but a modern photograph. It was an attractive picture in graceful arrangement and delicate coloring, and my hostess had placed it in a conspicuous place. Her ignorant eyes beheld only its artistic beauty, but my heart turned sick with shame. That picture would never have been allowed in any responsible house in Japan, for it was the photograph of a well-known courtesan of Tokyo, taken at the door of her professional home. Oh, why do Japanese sell those things? I shudderingly asked myself, but immediately came to the puzzling response. Why do Americans want to buy? One day I went into the city with a friend to do some shopping. We were on a street cart, where my attention was attracted by a little girl sitting opposite us, who was eating something. Children in Japan do not eat on the street or in a public place, and I did not know then that this is not the custom in America, as it is with us never to eat except at a table. My friend and I were busy talking, so for a while I did not notice the child, but when I chanced to glance over at her again, I was surprised to see that she was still eating. 2 or 3 times afterward, I looked at her, and finally I turned to my friend. I wonder what that child is eating, I asked. She's not eating anything, my friend replied. She is chewing gum. Again, I looked at the child. She was sitting, drooped and weary, her loose hands lying in her lap, and her feet spread around the bundle in a very awkward and difficult position. As I watched her tired face, suddenly I remembered something that had happened on the train on my trip across the continent. Is she sick? I asked. No, I think not. Why do you ask? I think I took that medicine on the train, I replied. Oh no, my friend said, laughing. Chewing gum is not medicine. It's a sort of wax, just to chew. Why did she do it? I asked. Oh, most children of her class chew gum, more or less. It's not an elegant thing to do. I don't allow my children to touch it. I said nothing more, but a partial light began to dawn upon my experience on the train. I had been uncomfortably carsick, and Mrs. Holmes had given me a small, flat block of fragrant medicine, which she said could cure nausea. I put it in my mouth and chewed a long time, but I could not swallow it. After a while, I got tired, but Mrs. Holmes was still eating hers, so concluding that it must be a medicine possessing wonderful merit, as it would not dissolve, I wrapped it in carefully in a piece of white tissue paper and put it in the little mirror case that I wore in my sash. I never heard what originated this particular custom, but I think I never found anything odd in America, for which I could not find an equivalent in Japan. Gum chewing reminded me of the hanzuki blowing, a habit common among some Japanese children, and also much practiced by tea house girls and women of humble class. The honzuki is made from a little red berry having a smooth, tough peeling. The core is very soft, and with proper care can be squeezed out, leaving the unbroken peel in the shape of a tiny round lantern. This little ball is elastic, and though it is no special taste, children love to hold it in the mouth, and by gently blowing the hollow shell, make what they call it mouth music. It sounds somewhat like soft, distant croaking of a pond frog. Honzuki blowing is not beautiful music, nor is it pretty custom, but it is neither harmful nor unclean. The worst that can be said of it is what many a nurse calls to her charge. Take that squeaky thing out of your mouth. It will make your lips pouty and ugly. End of chapter 18. Okay. So she's sharing with us all the weird things she thought of America. Are you still playing Minecraft, Homestar? Are you winning, son? What are we calling weird? Americans are weird. You don't win in Minecraft, man. You don't win. You just survive. I know what you meant. I'm just poking fun. Are you digging for jewel? Just survive. Oh, mining? Are you trying to make something? Every time I hear about Minecraft mining, I just think of that one scene when Solan went mining with Pomu, and Pomu couldn't find any diamonds, but Solan kept finding diamonds. I'm like, what the heck? Creating my real estate empire. Make a home for me. Hey. I'm an old lady. I'm gonna need a retirement home. No boomers allowed. Come on. You love it. I'm eating potato wedges. No. Potato wedges. I told you I love potatoes. So good. Could be softer though. No. We went to the store and we got it at the deli area. That is true. My roomie is the cook or the chef, not me. I'm the cleaner. I did ask Rumi, and they don't want to collab at the moment. Rumi can't be a boomer. I don't know about that. I'm just gonna say I'm cooler than Rumi. I'm the cool one. No, I don't know if they're shy. They're not a weeb like me. Yeah, my roomie's not a weeb like me. They're a normie. I'm not a normie. Sometimes they're sick of my my weakness. I'll show their Pokemon collection sometime. Shut up. I'm cooler than Rumi, okay? I'm the cool one. I need to make sure my headphone's not gonna get in my head that dent. I'm super paranoid now. Yeah, they have a lot more cards. They're pretty serious about card collecting. Whoever got the most Pokemon cards is the coolest. I have the most original ones. Rumi doesn't have any original Pokemon cards. Well, they only have it for like the material value. I have mine for the nostalgia value. I don't know, I'll ask them. I'll ask them. Excuse me. Anyone with Pokemon cards are always taken. Does that mean you don't have any Pokemon cards? Ouch. The heck. Sorry. My collection isn't high as Rumi. But you said anyone with Pokemon cards is taken. You have some Pokemon cards, right? What you hiding from us, Paulson? What you hiding? True. I did say that. You're not single either. Why does Ruby sound so cool right now? I'm the cool one. I'm the cool one. My collection just as zapatos. You're never gonna let me forget that, are you? I thought you were sleeping, Yuki. Come on now. It's probably like almost 5 or 6 there, right? Gotta wake up soon. She got the levy card. My roommate did tell me that. They were like, why are you always cackling in there? I bet Rumi can say Zapdos name correctly. Oh yes, I'm sleeping right now. Are you lucid dreaming? Yeah, I'm always laughing, and then they're like, why are you always cackling in there? Why don't you laugh more girly? I'm like, this is my laugh. This is my laugh. Who laughs girling anymore? It's because Rumi hasn't met me. Interesting. Interesting. I'm a Rumi simp right now. Sorry. This is my stream. It's not Rumi's stream, okay? I'll have to ask. I'll have to ask. They're not really into Vtubers. Alright. What's it? Chapter 19. No wait, is it 19? Yes, 19. We're halfway done. But the last 2 chapters aren't as long. Okay, chapter 19. Thinking. It's cool. I'll comment. We shall see. At the broad corner, where our front and side porches joined, was where my hammock swung. It was shaded by a big apple tree, and I used to put it in the big cushion and sit Japanese fashion while I read. I could never get used to lying in it, as mother sometimes did, but I like to imagine that I was in an open kago, a quiet, not a swaying one, and watch for glimpses between the trees of the carriages and country teams that passed occasionally on the road beyond the big evergreens and the stone wall. From there, too, I could look across a little stretch of green, and under the break made in a lilac hedge by the drawbridge, to the home of our nearest neighbor. We did not have many close neighbors, for our suburb was a wide-spreading one with the houses far apart, each set in the midst of its own stretch of lawn and shrubbery. Many of these lawns were separated from each other by only a narrow graveled path or a carriage road. I loved these fenceless homes. In Japan, I had never known of a home not enclosed by walls of stone or plaster. Even humble village huts had hedges or brushwood or bamboo. One of the odd fancies of my childhood was to imagine how wonderful it would be if, without warning, all hedges should fall and hidden gardens be suddenly revealed to every passerby. In my American home, I felt that my childhood wish had come true. The fences were all down, and the flowers and grass free for all to see and enjoy. Then my mind drifted to the gardens of Japan, where it was shut in beauty for a few. I was thinking all this one pleasant afternoon as I sat in the hammock, sewing, while mother was tying up the crimson rambler that covered parts of the porch with a curtain of green. "Mother," I said suddenly, as a new thought came to me, "did you ever think of a Japanese woman as being in prison with the key to her cell in her pocket, and not unlocking the door because it would not be polite thing to do? Why, no, said Mother, surprised. What are you thinking, Etsu? That idea came to me the day I went to my first afternoon tea. Do you remember? Yes, indeed, said Mother, smiling. You looked like a drooping blossom as you came up the path with Miss Helen. She said that everyone was there and that you were the belle of the ball. And then you sat down on the porch step and quietly remarked that people were just like their lawns. I never quite understood what you meant. I shall never forget that day, I said. All the time I was dressing to go, I pictured how the ladies would look, sitting in Mrs. Anderson's parlor in the pretty dresses and wavy hair, talking pleasantly the way they do when they walk, when they make calls. But they did not sit at all. It was like being in the street, for they all kept on their hats and gloves, and stood in groups or walked around the crowded rooms, all talking at once. I was so confused by the buzz of the voices that my head was really dizzy. But it was all intensely interesting, and not exactly undignified. People asked my queer questions, but everyone was so kind and everyone was happy. Was it the noise and the excitement that tired you so? Asked Mother. Oh no, I liked it. It was a happy noise. I liked everything. But on the way home, Miss Helen asked me to tell her about Our Lady's receptions in Japan. I could see in my mind just how everyone used to look at an anniversary celebration in my home in Nagaoka. Mother sitting so gently and stately, and all the ladies in their ceremonial dresses, having a quietly nice time and expressing every emotion, in a kind of suppressed way, by smiles and bows and a few gestures. For at a formal gathering in Japan, it is rude to laugh out loud or to move too much. It is beautiful and restful, said Mother. But it's not in nature, I cried, sitting upon in my excitement. I've been thinking about it ever since. Our conventionality is too extreme. It is narrowing to the soul. I hate to be so happy here, and all those patient, subdued women sitting hushed in their quiet homes. Our lives in Japan, a man's as well as a woman's, are like our tied-down trees, our shut-in gardens, I stopped abruptly, then added slowly, I am growing too outspoken and American-like. It does not suit my training. You want to pull the fences down too suddenly, dear, said Mother gently. The flowers of Japan have blossomed in a shadowy garden, and sudden, bright sunlight might kill their beauty and develop them into strong, coarse weeds. It is only morning there now. The blossoms will grow with the light, and by noon the fences will have fallen. Don't pull them down too suddenly. Mother leaned over the hammock, and for the first time, kissed me softly on the brow. One time I went with some lady friends to see Ellen Terry in The Merchant of Venice. It was an afternoon performance, and after the play, we went to some place and had tea. The ladies were all enthusiastic in their praise of the great actress, but I could say nothing, for that afternoon was one of the great disappointments of my life. I had been quite excited over seeing for the first time a Western actress of the worldwide fame, and had formed a picture in my mind of the modest young doctors of law, who would walk across the stage with slow-moving ceremony, and with grave dignity deliver the wonderful monologue. Of course, I had consciously pictured the Japanese ideal. Instead, a tall figure in a scarlet gown and cap, which reminded me of the dress of a Japanese clown, swept onto the stage with the freedom of naturalness that belonged only to common-class people in Japan. Portia talked too loud and fast for a lady of elegance and culture, even in disguise. And the gestures, oh, most of all, the vigorous, man-like gestures. I had no impression but one of shocked surprise. The beautiful moonlight scene where Jessica meets her lover, and also the last act where the two husbands recognize their wives, were full of too many kisses and seemed to be most indelicate. I wished I was not there to see. In the midst of the conversation, one of the ladies, who had watched me rather curiously during the last scene, turned to me. "Do you have love scenes on the Japanese stage?" she asked. "Oh yes," I answered. "Our stage shows life as it is, and Japanese are just like other people." "But your face got crimson, little lady, and you looked as if you had never seen a lover before," she said smilingly. I explained as well as I could that for generations we had been taught that strong emotion expression is not consistent with elegance and dignity. That does not mean that we try to repress our feelings, only that public expression of them is bad form. Therefore, on the stage, the love scenes are generally so demure and quiet that an American audience would not be thrilled at all. But the dignified bearing of our actors has a strong effect on Japanese people, for they understand the feeling that is not shown. "What do lovers do when they are, well, very enthusiastic?" asked the young lady. "They gently turn their backs to each other," I replied. "Turn their backs to each other? My stars!" was the very peculiar exclamation of the young lady. In a moment she turned to me again. "Is it really true," she asked, "that in Japan there is no kissing, even between husband and wife?" "There is bowing, you know," I replied. "That is our mode of heart expression." "But you don't mean that your mother never kissed you?" exclaimed the young lady. "What did she do when you came to America?" "Only bowed," I replied. And then she said very gently, "A safe journey for you, my daughter." I had not been here long enough then to understand the odd expression that came over the faces of the ladies, nor the moment's silence that followed before the conversation drifted into other channels. Bowing is not only bending the body, it is a spiritual side also. One does not bow exactly the same to father, young sister, friend, servant, and child. My mother's long, dignified bow and gentle voiced farewell held no lack of deep love. I felt keenly even each heartthrob, and every other person present also recognized the depth of hidden emotion. Japanese people are not demonstrative. Until late years, the repression of strong emotion was carefully drilled into the mind and life of every Japanese child of the better class. There is much more freedom now than formerly, but the influence of past training is seen everywhere, in art, in literature, and in the customs of daily life. With all their cheerful friendliness of everyday intercourse, there is a certain stiffness of etiquette which holds in check all exuberance of expression. It dictates the ceremonies of birth and the ceremonies of death, and guides everything in between. Working, playing, eating, sleeping, walking, running, laughing, crying. Every emotion is chained, and by one's own wish, with the shackles of politeness. A married girl will laugh softly behind her sleeve. A hurt child chokes back his tears and sobs out, "I'm not crying!" A stricken mother will smile as she tells you that her child is dying. A distressed servant will giggle as she confesses having broken your treasured piece of china. This is most mystifying to a foreigner, but it means only an effort to keep in the background. A display of one's own feelings would be rudeness. When American people judge the degree of affection between Japanese husband and wife by their conduct to each other, they make a great mistake. It would be as bad form for a man to express approval of his wife or children as it would be for him to praise any other part of himself. And every wife takes pride in conducting herself according to the rigid rules of etiquette. We each recognize dignity and humility as the virtues that reflect greatest glory in the home of which she is mistress. One other thing may explain some seeming peculiarities. The Japanese language has no pronouns, their place being taken by adjectives. A humble or derogatory adjective means my, and complimentary one means your. A husband will introduce his wife with some such words as these: pray bestow honorable glance upon foolish wife. By this he simply means, I want you to meet my wife. A father would speak of his children as ignorant son or untrained daughter, when his heart is overflowing with pride and tenderness. I shall never forget my first expression in seeing kissing between man and woman. It was on my trip across the continent when I came from Japan. A seat near me was occupied by a young lady, very prettily dressed, with gentle, almost timid manners. She was a young married woman, returning from her first visit to her parents. I was much attracted by her feet, yet modest actions, planned how I would try to imitate her. One morning, I noticed that she was dressed with unusual care, and it was evident that she was nearing the end of her journey. Finally, the train began to slow down as she watched out the window with eager interest. The train had barely come to a stand when in rushed a young man, who threw his arms around that modest, sweet girl and kissed her several times. And she did not mind, but blushed and laughed, and they went off together. I cannot express my feelings, but I could not help recalling what my mother said to me just before I started for America. I have heard, my daughter, that it is the custom for foreign people to lick each other as dogs do. There was no criticism in my mother's heart, nothing but wonder. I repeat her words only as illustration of how unfamiliar a custom may appear to the eyes of a stranger. Years of residence in this country have taught me that American mode of heart expression has a spiritual side, just as bowing has. I now understand that a kiss expresses kindness or gratitude, friendship or love, each of which is a sacred whisper from heart to heart. Matsuo was very fond of mother, and often, when he had received a new assignment of goods from Japan, he would select something especially pretty or appropriate and bring to her. Once he gave her a small lacquer box, which looked something like an old-fashioned medicine case hung from the sash by people of ancient time. The outside was marked with lines corresponding to the partitions in the medicine case, but when I opened it, I saw that instead of being a succession of layers, it was an open box divided into two upright partitions to hold up playing cards. The lacquer was poor and the work roughly done, but it was an ingenious idea to make a box to hold the means of pleasure, in imitation of a case to hold a cure for pain. What original people Americans are, I said, but I didn't know that lacquer was made here. Matsuo turned the little box over, and on the bottom I saw a label, Made in Japan. A few days later, I went down to Matsuo's store and he showed me whole shelves of articles called Japanese, the sight of which would have filled any inhabitant of Japan with a puzzled wonder as to what the strange European article could be. They were all marked, Made in Japan. Matsuo said that they had been designed by Americans in shapes suitable for use in this country, then made to order in Japan, in Japanese factories, and shipped direct to America without having been seen in Japanese outside the factory. That troubled me, but Matsuo shrugged his shoulders. As long as Americans want them, design them, order them, and are satisfied, there will be merchants to supply. He said, but they are not Japanese things. No, he replied, but genuine things do not sell. People think they are too frail and not gay enough. Then he added slowly, the only remedy is in education, and that will have to begin here. That night I lay awake a long time thinking. Of course, artistic, appreciative persons are few in comparison to the masses who like heavy vases of green and gold, boxes of cheap lacquer, or gay fans with pictures of a Latin girl with flower hairpins. But if Japan lowers her artistic standards, I sighed, what can she hope for from the world? All that she has, or is, comes from her heart, ideals, and her pride. Ambition, workmanship, courtesy, all are folded within those two words. I once knew a workman one who was paid by the job, not the hour, to voluntarily undo half a day's work, and the cost of much heavy lifting, just to alter a few inches, the position of stepping stones in a garden. After it was placed, to his satisfaction, he wiped the perspiration from his face, then took out his tiny pipe and squatted down, nearby, to wait still more unpaid for time in gazing at the reset stone, with pleasure and satisfaction in every line of his kindly old face. As I thought of the old man, I wondered if it was worthwhile to exchange the delight of heart pride in one's work for anything. My mind mounted from the gardener to workman, teacher, statesman. It is the same with all. To degrade one's pride, to lose one's hold on the best, and after having it, is death to the soul growth of man or nation. End of chapter 19. Excuse me. Yeah, I totally felt that. In the Hmong language, we don't have pronoun, or it doesn't have pronouns either. We just have the word for you. We don't have he, she. And I get that too, where it might not just be the Japanese culture, but like in all Asian cultures, there's a lot of emotional repression. Wait, what? You weren't listening. Yeah, in a lot of the Asian languages, there's no pronouns. There's only a word for like you. How did you know? What do you mean? Like there's only one word for you. There's no words. I don't know why. I don't know why there's no pronouns. Like we use a word that just means you, like no, not specific to gender. Cause you're like, wait, what? So I know let's see. What is the word for you in, I forgot it in Japanese, but for Hmong, the word for you is nu. No, Hmong doesn't have he, she. Nu means you. There's no gender specific. And you use nu for everyone. No, we only have it for you and they, them. They, them is lol, lolly, or lolly. But for you, it's nu, nuli, something like that. There's no gender specific. And I know for Chinese, they have, I think it was like ta, de, ni de. They don't have Kuro pronouns is 9. Why me? Yeah, I don't think in the Asian language there's no like gender specific or specific pronouns. I'm gonna cancel one. It's not just Hmong. Chinese doesn't have it. I don't know about Korean, but I'm pretty sure they don't have it either. And then Japanese doesn't have specific pronouns either. Cancel Asia. No, we don't like to complicate things. But here's the switch. Like remember I told you like in the English language when you say grandma, it means both for like your maternal and paternal grandma, right? But in the Asian language, there are specific ones to call each of your grandma. So there, I guess we have that. Like what you would call your maternal grandma is different from your paternal grandma in the Asian languages. You are nenek? Nani nani? Like for example, if you're talking about, like in the Hmong language, if you're talking about your paternal grandparents, that sounds complicated. Grandma is universal. I told you that's the switch off, okay? You don't have specific pronouns, but we have specific names to call your grandparents. That way, if you say one of the words, you immediately know if it's from your mom's side or your dad's side. So you don't have to say, oh, it's my grandma from my dad's side. So for example, for your dad's side, your grandma is, what was it? Yo, and your grandma is Bo, which is what you keep calling me, Palm Star. Bo is your paternal grandmother. Oh, Nenek is grandma. Did I say it right? Nenek? Nenek is grandma. But if you're saying your grandparents from your mom's side, grandma is Netai, and grandpa is Yotzi. Oh, Nenek is grandma. Yeah, well, what language is Nenek for grandma? What language is that, Yuki? Yes. I was hoping you didn't know the real meaning of ball. I figured it out. I figured it out. Ooh, Indonesian. Nenek. Nenek. Google told me. Google knows a lot of things. But Google's Hmong translations are very bad. Very bad. Yes, Tom, what a language is that? He Googled it. It's Indonesian, right? Yuki is from Indonesia. Maybe Indonesia. Sorry for doxing. How could you? How could you? It's okay. Kuro is Nenek. Yes. But I'm not from Indonesia. It's okay. But yeah, there are no specific pronouns in most Asian languages that I've come to find out. Nene, nenek pao. Nani na nani? Nenek pao. I feel like I need to burp. There we go. Kuro gonna learn Indonesian soon. Yeah. There's Indonesian from Yuki, and then I'm trying to learn some Filipino words from my mama and papa. They taught me some bad words though. Oh no, she's getting sick. No, I'm not sick. I drank some carbonated soda, so I was burping. Always stinky. Oh no, stinky grandma. You speak Filipino? Mahal kita. Is that Malaysian or is that Filipino? Filipino, right? I don't speak Filipino, but my mama and papa, Kino and Iwi, they're Filipino. And when we were playing Mahjong, they taught me some Filipino words. Some bad Filipino words. Yeah, my Vtuber parents. Oh no, mahal kita. I forgot. Is that Filipino? That's Filipino, right? Or is it Malaysian? No, my legit parents are not Filipino. Mahal kita is I love you in Filipino. Oh, okay. Yes. I remember Palmstar mentioning that too. I forgot. I'm old. Forgot. In Malaysia, mahal means we rich. Really? Oh. So but no Cantonese. Cantonese? Let me see. What do I know of Cantonese? I know, help me. Cao mea. What was the other one? Well, I know one bad word in Cantonese too. I do want to learn Cantonese. It's just hard. I like listening to Selene speaking Cantonese. It's very fun. I think it's a very fun language. All the different tones. And some of my favorite movies from China are from Hong Kong, so they're all in Cantonese. All I heard is excuses. Kuro, nani. I bet Rumi can speak Cantonese. No, Rumi can't speak Cantonese. They can speak Thai though. Do you play Harry Potter Magic Awakened? No, I don't. Is that the controversial game? No? You speak Thai? Don't lie to me. I don't speak Thai. I only know some words in Thai. Maybe I'll do a language learning stream one day. Rumi speaks Thai? Yeah, Rumi speaks Thai. I don't. I think the game is called Hogwarts Legacy. Oh, Hogwarts Legacy. That's the one. That's a controversial one, right? But why is it just that one and not all Harry Potter games? Then? Why are all these people targeting people who play, or VTubers who play Hogwarts Legacy? Makes no sense. But yeah, I don't really play any Harry Potter games. Rumi is not extremely cooler. Oh, psh, 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 psh. I'm the cool one. I'm the weeb, okay? But I did go to Thailand with Rumi once, and they were my guide. They translated everything for me. Very nice, very nice. Because J.K. Rowling had a lot of controversial comments about trans people. I know about that, but like, why are they only singling out that one Hogwarts game? Is it because it's new and it's like a newly released game? Like, where was all this energy when there were previous Harry Potter games? Doesn't make sense. I don't know. We won't get into that. But yeah, I don't play a lot of Harry Potter games. Alright, we're down to the last chapter. It's only 4 pages. Not too long. True, but there hasn't been any movements for a long time. Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. It's like a new target for them. Unbelievable. But yeah. Alright, chapter 20. Neighbors. When I came to America, I expected to learn many things, but I had no thoughts that I was going to learn anything about Japan. Yet, our neighbors, by their questions and remarks, were teaching me every day new ways of looking at my own country. My closest friend was the daughter of a retired statesman, the general, we called him, who lived just across the steep little ravine which divided our grounds from his. Our side was bordered by a hedge of purple lilacs, broken, opposite the path to the well, by a rustic drawbridge. One autumn afternoon, I was sitting on the shady step of the bridge with a many-stamped package in my lap, watching for the postman, just about the hour his family little wagon, looking, with its open side doors, like a high, stiff cargo, would be passing on its return trip down the hill. And I was anxious to hurry off my package of white cotton brocade and ribbons of various patterns and colors, the most prized gifts I could send to Japan. Suddenly, I heard a gay voice behind me, reciting in a high sing-song. Open your mouth and shut your eyes, and I'll give you something to make you wise. I looked up at the charming picture. A bright-eyed friend, in a white dress and a big lacy hat, was standing on the bridge, holding in her cupped hands 3 or 4 grape leaves pinned together with horns. On this rustic plate were piled some branches of luscious purple grapes. "Oh, how pretty!" I exclaimed. "This is just the way Japanese serve fruit. And this is the way they carry flowers," she said, putting on the grapes on the step and releasing a big bunch of long-stemmed tiger lilies from under her arm. "Why do Japanese always carry flowers upside down?" I laughed and said, "It looked very odd to me when I first came, to see everybody carrying flowers with the tops up. Why do you?" Why, they look prettier so, and that's the way they grow." That was true, and yet I had never before thought of anyone's caring for the appearance of flowers that were being carried. We Japanese have a way of considering a thing invisible until it is settled in its proper place. "Japanese seldom carry flowers," I said, "except to the temple or to the graves. We get flowers for the house from flower vendors who go from door to door with baskets swung from shoulder poles. But we do not send flowers as gifts, and we never wear them." "Why?" asked Miss Helen. "Because they wither and fade, and so to send flowers to a sick friend would be the worst omen in the world." "Oh, what a lot of pleasure your poor invalids and hospitals are losing," said Miss Helen. "And Japan is the land of flowers." Surprised and thoughtful, I sat silent, but in a moment was aroused by a question. "What were you thinking of when I came, sitting here so quietly with that big bundle on your lap? You look like a lovely, dainty, picturesque little peddler." "My thoughts were very unlike those of a peddler," I replied. As I sat here watching the dangling end of the bridge chain, I was thinking of a Japanese lover of long ago who crossed the drawbridge 99 times to win his lady love. In the 100th time, in a binding snowstorm, he failed to see that it was lifted, and so fell to his death in the moat below. "How tragic!" exclaimed Miss Helen. "What did the poor lady do?" "It was her fault," I said. "She was vain and ambitious, and when she saw a chance to win the love of a high official at court, she changed her mind about her lover, and commanded her attendants not to lower the bridge the day he expected to come triumphant." "You don't mean that cold-blooded creature actually planned his death?" "It was the storm that caused his death," I said. "She was fickle, but not wicked. She thought that when he found the bridge lifted, he would know her answer and go away." "Well, sometimes our girls over here are fickle enough, dear knows," said Miss Helen. "But no American woman would ever do a thing like that. She was actually a murderess." I was shocked at such a practical way of looking at my romantic tale, and hastened to add that remorseful Lady Kumochi became a nun and spent her life in making pilgrimages to various temples to pray for the dead. At last she partially lost her mind, and as a wandering beggar, lived and died among the humble villagers on the slopes of Mount Fuji. Her fate is up by priests, I concluded, as a warning to all fickle-minded maidens. "Well," said Miss Helen, drawing a deep breath, "I think she paid dearly for her foolishness, don't you?" "Why, well, perhaps," I replied, rather surprised at the question. "But we are taught that if a woman so loses her gentle modesty, that she can treat with scorn and disrespect a plea of loyal lover. She is no longer a worthy woman. Suppose a man jilts a maid, what then?" quickly asked Miss Helen. "Is he no longer considered a worthy man?" I did not know how to reply, and instinctively I upheld to myself the teachings of my childhood, that man is the protector, and guide, and woman the helper, the self-respecting but nevertheless uncritical, dutiful helper. Often afterward, Miss Helen and I had heart-to-heart talks in which her questions and remarks surprised and sometimes disturbed me. Many of our customs I had taken for granted, accepting the ways of our ancestors without any thought, except that thus they had been and still were. When I began to question myself about things which had always seemed simple and right because they were in accordance with laws made by our wise rulers, sometimes I was puzzled, and sometimes I was frightened. "I am afraid that I am growing very bold and manlike," I would think to myself. "But God gave me a brain to use, else why do I have it?" All my childhood I had hidden my deepest feelings. Now again it was the same. My American mother would have understood, but I did not know. And so, repressing all outward signs, I puzzled my way alone, in search of higher ideals. Not for myself, but for Japan. Miss Helen's father was 90 years old when I knew him. He was a wonderful man, tall with broad shoulders, with a trifle stoop, and with a thick iron-gray hair and bushy eyebrows. A strong face he had, but gentle and humorous when he talked. I looked upon him as an encyclopedia of American history. I had always loved the study of history, in childhood and at school, but I had learned that little of the details of Americans' part in the world. And sit with the general and his invalid wife listening by the hour while he told stories of early American life. Knowing that incidents of personal history especially appealed to me, he once told me that his own large estate was bought by his father from an Indian chef in exchange for one chair. Or Indian chief! What the heck? Indian chief in exchange for one chair, a gun, and a pouch of tobacco. And that mother's large home was once an Indian village of bark tents, and was purchased for half a dozen split-seated kitchen chairs. These incidents seemed to me almost prehistoric, for I had never known anyone of anyone whose home did not date back into a far past. When America was still a youthful nation, the General had represented his country as a diplomat in Europe, and with his beautiful young wife had taken part in the foreign social life in Paris, and later in Washington. My first glimpse of American life abroad I received through the word pictures of this gracious lady, and through her experiences I began to understand, with sympathy, something of the problem in Japan of Americans trying to understand the Japanese, which, heretofore, I had looked upon only as the problem of Japanese trying to understand Americans. From childhood until I met the general, the word ancient had commanded my reverence. I had been conscious that the Inagaki family tree was rooted in history centuries old, and that our plots in the cemetery were the oldest in Nagaoka. It has seemed an unquestioned necessity that we should follow the same customs that our ancestors had observed for hundreds of years, and it was my pride that they were the customs of dynasty, which was among the very oldest in the world. After I became acquainted with the general and heard him talk of the wonderful development of a nation much younger than my family tree, the word ancient lost of its value. Even the general's own lifetime, the years of only one man's life, represented such a marvelous advance in national growth that sometimes I looked upon him almost with awe, wondering how much real value should be attached to antiquity. Perhaps, I sometimes said to myself, it would be better not to look back with such pride to a glorious past, but instead to look forward to a glorious future. One means quiet satisfaction, the other ambitious work. One evening after Matsuo and I had been over to call on the general, Miss Helen walked back with us across the drawbridge. Matsuo went on to join Mother on the porch, and Miss Helen and I sat on the step of the bridge, as we often did, to talk. When Father told that story about Molly Pitcher, said Miss Helen, I wondered if you were thinking about Japanese women. Why? I asked. Well, she replied hesitantly, several times I've heard you say that American women are like Japanese. I don't see that Molly Pitcher is much of a Japanese specimen. Oh, you don't know Japanese history, I exclaimed. We had many women heroes in Japan. Yes, of course, said Miss Helen quickly. In every country there are heroic women who rise to noble sacrifice on occasion, but there are exceptions. Books and travelers all speak of Japanese women as being quiet, soft-spoken, gentle, and meek. That picture doesn't apply to the American type of women. The training is different, I said, but I think that at heart they are much the same. Well, said Miss Helen, when it becomes the fashion for us to wear our hearts on our sleeves, perhaps we will appear gentle and meek. But, she added as she rose to go, I don't believe that Japanese men think as you do. Tonight, when I spoke of the book on Japan that I have been reading, and said that I believe the author was right, when he declared that for modesty and gentle worth, Japanese women lead the world, your husband smiled and said, Thank you, as if he thought so too. Miss Helen, I said earnestly, although our women are pictured as gentle and meek, and although Japanese men will not contradict it, nevertheless it is true that, beneath all the gentle meekness, Japanese women are like volcanoes. Miss Helen laughed. You are the only Japanese woman that I've ever saw, except at the exposition, she said, and I cannot imagine your being like a volcano. However, I'll give in to your superior knowledge. You have had Molly Pitchers among your women, and flirts. That lady, what's her name, who you told me about the other day? She was a flirt. With a vengeance. And now you say that you have volcanoes. Your demure-appearing countrywomen seem to have surprising possibilities. The next time I come over, I'm going to challenge you to give me a specimen of a Japanese genuine women's rights woman. That is easy, I said, laughing in my turn. A genuine women's rights woman is not one who wants her rights, but one who has them. And if that means the right to do men's work, I can easily give you a specimen. We have a whole island of women who do men's work, from planting rice to making laws. What do the men do? Cook, keep house, take care of the children, and do the family washing. Don't mean it! Exclaimed Miss Helen, and she sat down again. But I did mean it, and I told her of Hachijo, a little island about 100 miles off the coast of Japan, where the women, tall, handsome, and straight, with their splendid hair coiled in an odd knot on the top of their head, and wearing long, loose gowns bound by a narrow sash tied in front, work in the rice fields, make oil from camellia seeds, spin and weave a peculiar yellow silk which they carry in bundles on their heads over the mountains, at the same time driving tiny oxen, not much larger than dogs, also laden with rolls of silk to be sent to the mainland to be sold. In addition to all this, they make some of the best laws we have and see that they were properly carried out. In the meantime, the older men of the community, with babies strapped to their backs, go on errands or stand in the street gossiping and swaying to sing-song lullaby, and the younger ones wash sweet potatoes, cut vegetables, and cook dinner, or in big aprons with sleeves looped back, splash, rub, and wring out clothes at the end of the stream. The beginning of this unusual state of things date back several centuries, to the time when the husbands and sons were forced to go to another island about 40 miles away for fishing, very little of which could be done near Hachijo. When silk proved more profitable than fish, the men returned to the island, but the government was in capable hands, which have never given up their hold. I told this to Miss Helen and closed by saying, a subject for your meditation is the fact that with these women rulers, both men and women are healthy and happy, and the social life there is more strictly moral than it is any other community of equal intelligence in Japan. You had better join the Equal Suffrage Party, said Miss Helen, and go on the lecture platform with that story. It has a list towards moral uplift, and might win voters for the cause. Well, and again she rose to go. Your women are such unexpected creatures that I am more than ever convinced that American women are not like Japanese. We talk so much and are so noisily interested in public affairs that we are expected to do almost anything. Whatever happens, we cannot surprise the world, but for one of your timid, shrinking kind suddenly to burst out in a bold, strong act, like lifting drawbridges and that sort of thing, completely upsets our preconceived ideas. And then to hear of it's being quietly but effectively done en masse, like those island women, is rather disconcerting. She drove over the bridge, calling back, anyway, although you are the sweetest little lady ever walked on sandals, you haven't convinced me. American women are not like Japanese women. More's the pity. With this absurd compliment from my extravagantly partial friend ringing in my ears, I started to walk toward the porch, when suddenly a voice called from the dusky shadows across the bridge. Oh, I didn't think of Mrs. Newton. I'll give up. She is like a Japanese woman. Good night. I smiled as I walked towards the porch, for I was thinking of something Mother had told me the very morning about Mrs. Newton. She was our dearest neighbor on the opposite side of our place from Miss Helen's home, and I knew her very well. She was a gentle woman, soft voiced and shy, who loved birds and had little box houses for them in her trees. I understood why Miss Helen should say that she was like a Japanese woman. But I never thought that she was. Her ideas were very sensible and practical, and she allowed her husband to be too attentive to her. He carried her cloak and umbrella for her, and once, in the carriage, I saw him lean over and fasten her slipper strap. What Mother had told me was that, a few days before, Mrs. Newton was sitting by the window sewing, when she heard a frightened chirping and saw a large snake reach up the trunk of the tree to one of her bird boxes on a low branch. She dropped her sewing, and running to the drawer where her husband kept a gun, she shot through the open window, right into the snake's head, and her little bird family was saved. How could she do it? I said to Mother. I never would have believed that frail, delicate Mrs. Newton would dare even touch a gun. She is afraid of every dog in the street, and she starts and flushes if you speak to her unexpectedly. And then, anyway, how could she ever hit it? Mother smiled. Mrs. Newton can do many things that you don't know about, she said. When she was first married, she lived for several years on a lonely ranch out west. One stormy night, when her husband was gone, she strapped the same gun around her waist and walked 6 miles through darkness and danger to bring help to an injured workman. I recall Mrs. Newton's soft voice and gentle, almost timid manner. After all, I said to myself, she is like a Japanese woman. End of chapter 20. We did it. All right. Whew. A lot of comparisons between Japan and America today. Is Yuki still with us? It's past your bedtime, Granny. No, it's not. The night is still young. Oh yeah, of course. When I said that, I yawned. Of course. I've actually been going to sleep late the past few days. I've had a lot to do at work and for my content. Very tired. But thanks for sticking around. You know, for this reading series, I think my 2 most favorite setups so far is this one and the bathtub one. The other ones was like, that's all I could do. But I tried really hard for this one. I like this one. I finally figured out how to implement background noise. The sussy moment. Oh, you love it. You love it. I like it when I try to create like an immersion, you know, for you guys. I like that. The sassy moment. You mean the say so moment? I just realized something. What? Nani? Why do you read where there's water? Oh! So you notice. And I remember I read at the beach that there was a body of water. Oh, nah, you sus. No. I'm pure and innocent. But yeah, I like water. That's why I like water Pokemon. Everywhere you read, there's always water. Exactly. I'm glad you noticed it. I'm not gonna say it, but you said, what are you talking about? Water's my element, bro. I am innocent. But yeah, I always try to make these streams fun and immersive for everyone. So I think I did really good on today's stream. I'm not gonna write it. Do it! Do it! I bet Remi's so sick to say so. Oh, I wouldn't say that. I write it then. I'll be sus. Because you are the sussy one. Do it! Do it! I'll counter it with my say-so-ness. No! 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 I like to read in water because I like water. Water is my element. Don't act innocent. I am innocent. I'ma say so, grandma. I didn't even think of that. I just like water. I feel calm when there's water. That's why I like port cities. Oh dear. Oh dear. That's why hydrangeas are my second favorite flower. No, you don't. Hydrangeas are my second favorite flower because you know when you're like when you think like, how do you say this? Hydrangeas doesn't absorb water from their stems. They absorb water right from their petals. First the bathtub, not this. What are you talking about? I love water. Water's my element. It's so peaceful and calm. But yeah, if you try to give hydrangeas that you picked like water, you don't put it in a vase and let the stem drink the water. You have to dump the whole, all the flower petals in water, a water bowl. It gets water that way. Don't hear the science fact. What I wrote was I'm countering your unsay-so-ness with my say-so-ness, okay? I'm not gonna write it. I'm countering it. It's not true. It's not true. How dare. How dare. This is a say-so place. Oh yeah, so tomorrow read in the desert and I'll believe you. Why would I read in the desert? I hate the desert. I hate the desert. So hot. You know, if you read in the desert, you sweat, okay? And that you sweat, and that makes you wet too. But you sweat because it's so hot. Heck no. Heck no. I'd rather be in the rain than in the desert. The rain keeps me cool, okay? Because I'm the cool roomie. But yeah, tomorrow we're gonna do another aesthetic stream, another hand cam stream. We're gonna do a somewhat flower arrangement. We're gonna do a flower bar. Put together a flower bar. Oh my god, why are you so sad? Rain gets you wet. What do you mean? What do you mean? I have an umbrella! I'm not getting away from the rain with the umbrella. I already accepted your sassiness. No. I've countered it with my say-so-ness. But I learned a little bit. Well, I guess that's good then. Okay, I'm gonna go do some stuff now, and then I'll be streaming again tomorrow. What in the morning? Around noon, close to noon time. But yeah, I'll be there and have some fun. Oh yeah, and another announcement. I'll probably repeat it again tomorrow, but I'm going to take next week off from streaming. Because it's gonna be a long holiday weekend, and I want to like relax for a week, and then I'll come back with some new stuff, exciting new stuff. Bye. Have a good weekend. I hope you get to see some fireworks. What holiday? It's the 4th this weekend. 4th holiday weekend. Yeah. Gonna be a long weekend, so I'm gonna enjoy it because I don't work Monday and Tuesday. I forgot. How dare. But yeah, I hope you have fun with your family. You get to see some cool fireworks. Never always wet. Okay, bye. I'm having a special bedtime. Okay, bye. See you tomorrow. Bye.